Hello everybody, my name is Eric Taran Mullins, and I spent roughly 9.5 years working my butt off on making my own manga comic book called Blithe. Almost as long as Attack on Titan's been in production. I watch a ton of anime while doing it, so I'll put my work in progress on the side here. I watch mostly dubbed, but subbed if ever I get a moment of precious free time. And let me tell you, I really didn't get that much free time, but I decided to put in the free time after so many people had suggested that I watch this series. I plowed through the whole thing, 3 days. It was hardcore. I did nothing but that. It was a lot. And I did watch it all dubbed regardless, though I did watch a couple episodes here and there in subtitled because I wanted to know. I was curious. Keep in mind, folks, that these are, of course, my opinions. Just because we don't see eye to eye on everything doesn't mean that we can't have an amazing conversation about it. So if you have any differences in opinion, please write so in the comment section below. With that aside, it's time to start talking about that 10-year production epic saga, Attack on Titan. And is it worth your sweet precious time? Full disclosure, I knew before going into AOT that it just wasn't my kind of show, but through so many people hammering into my head that it's an absolute must watch, I decided to give her a go. I also really focused on this series. Not drawing for once. This on the side here, this was recorded from another time, but I'm using it for this now. I did take notes though. So many notes. Because of this, I like to think that some of my remarks about this series will be a little more objective over subjective, but I mean, I am only human, right? I'm gonna do my best here. I wasn't sure how to tackle this series at first. Having put a lot of energy into watching it, should I make a deep dive? Get right into the heart of everything? But then I took a deep breath and remembered, that's not what I like to do here. I like making videos for people who are on the fence about watching a series. So I'm gonna take a page from AOT and I'm going to give this video 2 parts. The first part being a spoiler-free rundown of the series, and the second one being a lot more about my personal opinions, which will be full of spoilers. Part 1. Spoiler-free series overview beginning section with this uncomplicated title that will for sure hype people over turning them away from learning all about Attack on Titan and if it is worth their precious time. Attack on Titan, or just AOT for some of ya, has 97 episodes where 8 of them are OADs, or like OAVs? They were packaged with various things over the years, along with 2 final episodes being over an hour each. This puts us at roughly 39 hours, give or take. For viewing order, I'd say during Season 1, once you finish the first 3 episodes, then you check out the OADs of Distress, Sudden Visitor, and Ilse's Notebook. These episodes do a great job at doing character development and a bit of world building without actually spoiling or ruining anything for you down the line. Then you'll finish up Season 1 where you'll jump into the OAD No Regret, which is a prequel that's about a later introduced character. Lost Girl, Walsina, Part 1 and 2. Then you'll go through Season 2 and Season 3 Part 1, where you'll watch the last OAD, which is Lost Girl, Lost in This Cruel World. Then it's just business as usual as you finish up the series right up into the end. I personally watched everything in chronological order, with the OADs due to already having watched Season 1 many years back. But the way I presented them to you will just save you from overall spoilers, and it'll be a lot more comprehensible for someone new to the franchise. The starting plot of the series is that humanity is on the brink of extinction due to human-looking brain-dead, for the most part, giant creatures named Titans. They roam around and they're just eating people left and right. And not even for sustenance. So much gore, wrapped up with vor. The strong underlying thematic of the series being more gore, more vor. Vor is short for vorophilia, a fetish wanting to be swallowed or devoured. I know this. How? Yeah, so this show ain't for the young ones. Vor part is a joke. It's a lot more distressful and violent and horrifying. Be mindful of this if you decide to show it to them. It's all heartbreak, misery, death, most of the way through, and it's a trauma-themed anime, like Evangelion, Madoka Magica, and so such. If you don't have a decent constitution, then you should definitely steer clear of this series. It's also perfect for showing those dang cartoons are for children types to shut their stupid faces up. In order to save humanity, the human species pulled off what the 45th American President of the United States couldn't, and they built themselves a wall. A fully functional wall with 3 different sectors to be exact, with the center of their protected homeland being the king of his castle. They invented a weapon system called the ODM gear, used to fight against these titans, and they are given to the 3 main military regiments. They have to practice hardcore in order to use this, and all become professional parkour enthusiasts in the process. Hardcore parkour!
Parkour! Michael! Parkour! Parkour! Yeah!
Parkour. Visually, it's stunning. The first military regiment is known as the Scouts. They're the ones that go out and hunt titans while exploring what's left of the world. Meanwhile, we have the garrison, who protects the walls, and lastly, the military police that protect inside the walls. This show focuses heavily on the Scouts, who seems to go outside of their jurisdiction often. One day, a titan that's so large it makes no sense looms over this wall and just seems to pop out of nowhere, and kicks in the door where an armored-looking chap who was already inside the wall then busts down another door, all leading towards the center of the kingdom. This allowed countless regular titans to come strolling in to the local population and just start munching down and massacring everyone. This actually kickstarts the events and trauma almost every named character goes through during Attack on Titan, especially our main protagonist. Eren is a self-righteous, idiotic, hot-headed, reckless kid who is incredibly passionate and has a motivation that just seems to infect others to want to push harder to stand next to him. His energy is off the charts, and where this could come off as frustratingly annoying, you've been following him from the start and sympathize with his hatred and rage. He isn't this way just because he wants to be the best, like no one ever was. Mikasa, who actually is incredible, like no one ever was, is a childhood adopted sister of Eren's. I think we all know where this is going. Yes, but no. See, the emotional spectrum that AOT hovers over is around human trauma, violence, anger, and a little bit of comedy slightly sprinkled here or there. Romance is absolutely not on the table. Oh, the writer tries, but it's incredibly infantile in its depiction, like watching a Disney Marvel film. Or a hardcore shonen. Mikasa is always by Eren's side, and she's incredibly capable at everything that's physical. Lastly, we have Armin, the small nerdy bookworm that after all the training he goes through could probably beat most of us up in a fight, but he's still regarded as the physically weak one among his peers. This guy, I would argue, is the main hero of the series, a total brain that consistently tries to think of unique, creative ways to fight against the Titan threat. The supporting cast is through the roof. If there's one thing this show does better than so many others, it's light character development. So many details that are all very realistic and down to earth, it's crazy. Just layer after layer after layer is what they want you to think. But most of them are rather simple in their depth, equivalent to a slice of pie.
But he turned out to be totally sweet. Sometimes people are layered like that. There's something totally different underneath than what's on the surface.
And sometimes there's a third, even deeper level, and that one is the same as the top surface one.
Huh?
Like with pie.
Luckily, not everyone is like this though. John. This guy gets the most character development in the entire series. He's absolutely fantastic. My favorite character in the show is actually Zoe. We would get along super well together. We both live in our own respective little worlds, though she isn't consistent with her personality throughout the series, and this really bugged me. Then we have Keith Chavez, who I'm just gonna mention because the trainer of this omnidirectional mobility gear. This guy is just so great. I'm saying things like this, however, the simplicity in character writing doesn't make for a bad character. There's just so many characters, so getting a little bit of character development for every little background character here and there is really something impressive. Levi is actually a basic B kind of character, but the writer and the animators go so hard on him that every time he shows up, it's always exciting and it always feels great. So many of these background characters get full names. They're seen during one season, you won't see them for a couple, and they show up seasons later for only about a minute. This work of putting a little bit of life into every single character definitely carries its weight as the show goes on. They want you to know that these are people. They want you to get attached. This is a trauma anime after all. Tronime? This way they get you on the edge of your seat when shit really hits the fan. Tronime. There are a ton of twists and turns all throughout. I seriously don't know how I managed to watch everything and not have it ruined for me after all these years. I was watching that new Scott Pilgrim cartoon the other day, a relatively new show as of December 2023, and I couldn't even get through the 9 episodes without having it spoiled for me randomly online. So annoyed about that because I'm going off topic. They pay attention to quite a few details, like cleaning up the bodies to prevent disease, the life of merchants in such a world. They don't embellish on them that much, but mentioning does suffice. This show is 30% death in action and 70% government politics, backdoor dealings, and all around meant to get you thinking, who's the real villain in all this? Maybe the humans? Perhaps humans are the true monster. The way I see it is if you can't put your shopping cart away properly, how does that reflect on us as a species? It takes 2 seconds. How is it that so many people just can't do this? Attack on Titan is consistently trying to keep you at the edge of your seat even when nothing is happening. The conversations are full of energy, frustration, things are looking bleak or dire. You rarely get a moment of rest. It can really burn a person out. So when something epic does inevitably happen later in the series, you can't always give it your full emotional attention. But perhaps when the show was airing week to week, this was okay. Going through it all in 3 days is probably not advised. I found myself being emotionally burnt out after the first 14 hours. Pacing is also a major issue with this series. If we were to cut season 1 into 3 parts, the whole second part is so incredibly slow. But I do have to give them props where props is due. When they break out of it, it's so damn epic. The payoffs in this series are worth it, which is amazing. Imagine going through a whole lot of useless nothing, talking about nothing until there's nothing left to talk about, only to get nothing for your contribution? I'm looking at you, Suzumiya Haruhi Endless 8. I'm going off topic. The animation quality is top shelf, regardless if you're a fan of the art style or not. And not just during action scenes. People just walking around in the background, living their lives. The background, just wow. They also put in these fun technical data informations during each commercial break. I like this. Extra info if you want to spend the time going over it all, but it won't ruin your experiences not reading them. It's just added background lore. For me personally, the aspect I enjoyed the most of this series is something you would expect for someone who normally watches anime 50% and listens 150%. Hideyuki Sawano. I have no words. 15 minutes later. Godly? I just feel like that's not good enough. This guy's beats mesh so well that the director definitely worked closely in order to make so many of those scenes shine as brightly as they do. To give you a little bit of context, you're going to hear background music seeded throughout a few episodes, a tune or a small theme here or there that comes back every now and then. It could be done as rock music, soft classical music, or a fusion of both of them. And when you finally reach that story apex of hype, a few episodes later, that's when the lyrics kick in. And you already know the song because it's been subconsciously put into your head. I just can't stress how perfect this is. I have never seen another anime series do as good a job at this as Attack on Titan. The voice acting in English is great. I don't know what to say other than that. All great performances, some voices here or there may grate on you, but there are so many characters. The dialogue is pretty down to earth, intelligent, and realistic. For the most part, I like how they consistently point out their own issues within their own plans or past endeavors. I would also like to mention, without spoiling, that from series 4 and onwards, the series takes a completely different direction. I wanted to mention this because it could have an impact on whether you're not okay with something drastic like this happening in a series that you've already put in over 25 hours of your time on. And this ends the first part of my episode. Now I'm going to be getting into part 2, which is full of spoilers and my own opinions on the whole series as a whole. I'm really going to go through it season to season. If you'd like to skip it and just go to my final thoughts, be sure to check out the chapters down below. Spoilers! You've been warned. Part 2, full of spoilers section, where I really voice my crude and trashy opinions while bringing up things a lot of fans won't want to hear. I'll probably get butchered in the comments. Eren is a less intelligent Paul Atreides. There, I said it. Legit, this show. I was a huge fan of Aaron's consistent motivational speeches. I'm a very passionate, driven person myself, so I can relate in a weird way. Season 1 definitely had a lot of poor pacing, along with 6 to 8 minutes of recap, intro, end credits. It's so rough, considering that the series isn't all like this. Episode 8 to 14 has such incredibly slow, pointless pacing that it actually turned me off from the series years ago on its release. But after re-watching it, I have to say, I still hated it like crazy, but when it finally comes to an end, that payoff scene with that song, Call My Name, and finally clogging up that hole was so epic. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. I felt like that giant rock also crushed those lengthy, stalled out episodes. It was such a great feeling. And that song, oh, so epic. I still have it in my head a few days later. Season 2. What was up with that dialogue? The first 7 episodes or so, it was just awful. And those time skips were not done in a clean and concise manner. It was so messy. Heck, even Zoe is freaking out about killing unique titans, which was so out of character for her. Halfway through this season, we start getting cold intros, so like things happening before the actual intro credits. But, I mean, it used to be recaps, so when you're fast forwarding or you're thinking, oh, I'll just skip after the theme song, don't do that halfway through season 2 because they just stop. Changing an episode structure can be quite annoying. This is one thing that was kind of throughout the whole series, but I just have to mention it. Horses are not that fast. I mean, they're quick. They're just not like able to keep up the pace of like a 100-mile-per-hour car. Damn, that consistent speed of them outrunning these giant titans was really frustrating at times. It made me think that they were more like video game mounts. I honestly don't know how I feel about this, because the animation with those horses running was always so gosh darn impressive. Season 2 actually almost made me drop the whole series. I wanted to do this review, people were telling me to watch the show, and I had such a hard time with that second season. But I kept moving forward towards the light of that third season, part 2. Season 3, part 1 is straight up my least favorite season of the whole series. So freaking hard for me to get through. It's super political and not at all well balanced, with all its storytelling, too much humans versus human stuff going on. And this is what I mean by unbalanced. They really should have sprinkled season 3 and even 2 throughout the whole series. And where were the Titans?
Now eventually you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right? Hello? Hello? Yes?
I really hate that man.
Imagine waiting years for this season only to have that. They do try to push some romance here and there throughout it, but it's just so badly done. And if they were gonna do it, they should have doubled down throughout the rest of the series, but more on this later. They introduce us to a Cad Bane style character. I guess he makes me think a little bit of the Bad, but this character is pretty much one-dimensional in his personality, and no one's better than Levi, so I didn't feel any sense of urgency. This was kind of an issue for me throughout the whole series. I mean, you got all these level 1 and 2 characters running around in the series, getting hacked up here and there. Every now and then you'll get a level 5 or 6 character, but they go up a boss villain that's at least level 10 or higher, so it feels like they're still level 1 or 2. Mikasa's a solid 7 or 8, so at least she's the only character I'd say is extremely good, but still kind of balanced and has her faults. But Levi, oh my gosh, he's just like level 20 the whole way through. He eclipses everything in the show so insanely that it makes no sense, and you kind of get that feeling of dread removed from you whenever he's around, at least when he's fighting. The founding father, blue bloods of the series, royalty I guess, all have an ability to make people lose their memories. This was established near the end of part 1 to season 3. Crystal should have used this power much earlier on accidentally while perhaps tending to someone's wounds. Slowly develop it throughout the series, you know? The show's already super intriguing and the characters are interesting. You don't have to keep one-upping yourself. Then Eren can magically control Titans. Like, I get it why you did it for future storytelling, but this as well should have been something that maybe could have been hinted on earlier in the series. It makes me think that the writer didn't necessarily write the whole story from start to finish before he started releasing it afterwards. I don't know if it's different in the manga. It's just in the show, a lot of these things kind of come out of nowhere. I also would have liked them to talk a little bit more about that underground city that Levi came from. This was really interesting and doesn't really get touched upon anymore. Season 3, Part 2, finally my saving grace of the series. This second part was incredibly good. It manages to fill in quite a few loose ends from past seasons. They have updated fancy new equipment, finally. One thing I have to mention though is how much time goes by in this show. It's kind of unrealistic. Everything from when they get out of the academy to this point is roughly 4 months, and I just don't buy it with all that traveling around. This isn't a video game. They don't have fast travel, although those mounts can certainly run forever regardless of terrain. It takes time to put together a large expedition and go out. But then again, Erwin really isn't the best strategist, so maybe he just was like, alright guys, grab your lunch bags, we're going out on an expedition. But I would like to mention that the training is 1 episode, and that's literally a span of like 4 years or so. And we only get 2 or 3 episodes, including the OADs. I think I would have liked a couple more training episodes. Erwin Smith finally bites the dust in this season. It just really couldn't have come sooner. He killed off more than half the population. Now, before you go all crazy on me in the comments section, think about it for a second. Early on, when the captured Titans are sabotaged or murdered, he whispers into Aaron's ear, "Who do you think is the true enemy here?" This is some rise against the power, fight the oppressors kind of words if I've ever heard them. And then he's consistently praised for his strategies, though we, as the viewer, are only seeing epic failures. All his plans go south, and the few results that they bear are not worth the cost of life, I would say. So many lost soldiers. Their best and brightest to this season, where then he's just running children out to their death. I actually had a theory that he was one of the villains from outside, tasked with taking it down from the inside. His strategies were literally just send wave after wave to their death. Always Hail Mary passes with very little chance of success. I actually thought he was thinning out the ranks of the country's best and brightest. If my theory had turned out to be true, I think I would have really loved this character more. He was a good talker, and he talked people right to their graves. But it turns out that this wasn't the case. Oh my gosh, and that scene where Aaron pleads for Armin to become the Colossal Titan is so perfect. He brings up all these actual successful strategies, and a KO'd brink of death Erwin finally makes the right call in smacking Levi's syringe away. Despite saying all these things about Erwin, he was actually an incredibly well done 3-dimensional character. I'm sad that they didn't just write a couple more successful feats under his belt. We should have saw this. This would have made us truly admire the character. Season 4 Part 1 was great, but I did have mixed feelings about the direction the story was taking. Granted, getting to see the lives of the enemy really helped me relate. You want to feel bad for them, but as Aaron said to Raynor, they're all brainwashed. The oppressed are fighting for their oppressors, pushing more oppression as they take over the world. They continue to get treated horribly and don't understand that they won't truly be free and treated as equals until they turn on their own country. Despite this, Aaron still goes through with his idiotic plan. I also like to say that when Armin ever comes up with a great strategy, there's always someone there to jump in and mention that, oh, Erwin's ghost must be next to you, but like, or that his life could never be as worthy as the commander's would have been. Yet time and again, Armin just saves the day in this series with minimal loss of life compared to Erwin. It feels so negative, as opposed to some people just saying, the captain denied treatment because he believes in you, so go out there and make him proud. Positive feedback, at least once in a while, would have been nice. But this anime has to be so dang grimdark all the time. Near the end of the first part, Aaron manipulates Zeke about his reasoning to wanting to eliminate a whole race of people and coincides with Zeke's beliefs. Like, just not well thought out. Aliens live a life of pain and hardship, so it would just be easier if they never existed at all. Don't fight the power. Don't battle for equality. In a world full of brainwashing and propaganda, just yourself and all those that have your lineage. I really loved how deep they made the brainwashing go for all the outside world and its people. This was incredibly well expressed because you could see it all over Zeke and his motives. I'd also like to mention that evil Aaron has a goatee. Coincidence? Or is this guy from an evil Star Trek universe? Season 4, Part 2! A Titan putting a maimed Zeke into his stomach in order to heal Zeke. more random powers! I don't mind the not explaining how things work, but they pick and choose so many convenient things in this regard that it's like a 6-year-old child telling a story about a superhero they created, and they just keep going and going off the rails. In this season, Eren lives throughout time and space. Time travel with a fun 2001 Space Odyssey moment attached. Kinda. It's really messy and should have been better established throughout the series, but it's still decently done. Nothing near the melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi. Hey, look at that. In this episode, I've not only managed to dunk on Haruhi for doing the worst stuff ever in an anime, but I'm also promoting it for being one of the best at doing something. It's actually an incredible series, but when you see the title, Endless 8, watch the first one, skip, watch the last one. That's all you need to see. I'm going off topic. When Eren starts up the rumbling, he speaks to all the Eldians on the planet. I have no issue with that, but I didn't like how they did it animation-wise. They added this Hackers Anonymous effect, where it was like you were watching the TV with white noise, and there's no TVs as far as I know from this show. It just didn't fit at all. After that, the Pure Titans turn on everyone in the kingdom for some reason. I guess Eren just didn't want to see his friends suffer, so this way he gets his surviving friends to kill them all? A mercy killing, I think? The whole section where they're actually killing off all their old friends was really heartwarming, depressing, and emotional. It was incredibly well done. Oh, and Annie is back. And is she okay? Annie, are you okay, Annie? She's not great, but she's okay. We also start to get a little bit of romance between her and Armin. No time for that. Violence and despair. Take priority. I kid, but only because I'm a huge rom-com drama person, so, you know, this show is extremely far from my usual. Final episode special part 1. The rumbling has begun. We know that an underground city exists in less advanced society, so are there more of these underground cities somewhere that can survive this? Also, if the Titans crush everything on the planet with their heat and their steam, does this include all the flora and the fauna? Would this not cascade into the decline and inevitable destruction of every living creature on the planet? Shut up, Eric. There's no time for that. Violence, action. The show is incredibly good with all its big details. However, when you get into the finer stuff, that's when certain things kind of get overlooked. And it's honestly the sort of thing I wouldn't even have asked for of AOT. It's just that they themselves are constantly the ones within their show putting in that microscope, and that's just so frustrating because now I am looking at all the details. As you see the rumbling happening, they show different parts of the planet and the horrors and atrocities that humans go through. Some of them being good people and they're dying. Some of them being bad people and they're dying. It was so very real and incredibly well done. Then we get to the final episode special part 2. I actually thought that the part 1 was the finale. I didn't even know there was something after that. I was so surprised. So much so that when I found out about it, I also had realized that there's no dubbing to it yet. So I watched this in subtitles. The transformation from dub to subtitle really didn't faze me one bit, so the voice acting in English was very well done. When we get Eren talking to all sorts of people having a regular relaxed moment, it made me sad we didn't get this kind of atmosphere a little more often to help balance out all the extreme tone and moments in the series. He laughs knowing he's an idiot and was given all this power, so he made idiot decisions. As if this makes the writer's choice of direction in the story okay for some reason. I just don't buy it. But I did really love this moment of rest. We get so few scenes like this in the series. At one point, we have this centipede titan creating creature running around and then releasing spores that the Eldians, when they get into contact to it, they turn into pure titans. Early in the series, Zeke actually mentions being able to do this himself, where they use his spinal fluid and then they actually use science and technology to turn it into this weapon. But here, this bug can just do it? That's just like, more superpowers. The stakes are already at their peak. Did they really have to do this too? But now it's even more hardcore with a full army of these titans running towards our like 5 heroes. Ugh, for real, like the ending, I just found it harsh. Making Eren the villain was just so, been there, done that. Especially for someone who gains a pinch of omnipotence. So he just doesn't value life because he lives kinda infinitely within his own life? Yet he's still attached emotionally to so many specific humans. For real, this is as far I'm gonna go into about this ending. The whole evil Eren timeline just isn't for me. I'd just like to mention the soundtrack one more time, where with the visuals, choreography, so gosh darn impressive. I actually truly believe that AOT is #1 for doing this. Don't get me wrong, Cowboy Bebop is absolutely amazing with their choreography and their music. It's just that it's all about that subconscious song buildup that AOT does that's something unique and very well done. This series really flipped the script near the end for that dramatic surprise reaction. But it was a huge gamble to take. I personally find that it didn't really pay off, but there are some of you out there that for sure did enjoy it. I'm not saying it's bad, it just wasn't for me. I personally would have just preferred something that was more simplistic and straightforward. The last thing that I'd like to say, there's just one major plot hole that I have with the whole series, and it's because they started it. And I say this, but I didn't read the manga, so maybe they really delve deeper into it. It's just in the anime, they really didn't. We get a scene at the end where Eren is actually having a one-on-one conversation with Historia. Remember Historia? She had like a season and a half all about her. I think that Historia should have been against Eren's plan up until he sits there and just tells her what happened to Ymir, the love of her life, where we get no closure or anything on this character other than her showing up for less than 2 seconds on screen and then mentioning her name as one of those ghost titans on top of Eren's back. Ymir was taken from her. The shock that the love of her life would have died like that, and she doesn't even get to say goodbye. She should have angrily looked into Eren's eyes and sided with him, just saying, "Burn it all down." With those large eyes showing pain, frustration, heartache, and conviction. But instead, we just get nothing. To me, this was actually the largest disappointment of the whole series, and only because they really spent so much time on this couple. And a little earlier on in season 4, she gets told to pump out as many children as possible for reasons that have no weight because Titans no longer exist in the end anyway. So it was all just a huge waste of time? My final thoughts. Attack on Titan really makes me think of the next step one would take after living life off of shonens. It's just taking all the classic shonen style relationships and violence and making it all edgier and hardcore, cranking up that dial from 10 to 11 for a hardcore, more adult audience. Though I think it is classified as a shonen, it definitely should be seen as a seinen. It's very volatile and still pretty adult with its visual depictions. So it makes sense that this series would have garnished the cult following it has, akin to One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach. The fans that grew up on those shonens are definitely AOT's target audience. It does a lot incredibly well, but it definitely still has some of its own flaws. After going so many highs and lows, would I suggest this anime to someone? Yes, absolutely. Most people don't plow through 39 hours of a series in 3 days, and most people aren't there taking notes while doing so, analyzing every little thing. I'm a super weird person, and I'd rather see an emotional conflict over actual physical violence. And I'm well aware that I'm the minority in this regard, but knowing is half the battle. So I tend to forgo a lot of negatives to a series when suggesting them to others. I like to think it makes me a little more objective in my views. This show is one of those groundbreaking, epic series. It may not replace Evangelion in its emotional trauma writing, or hold a candle to Steins Gate in its little details, but what it lacks it makes up for with raw passion and hyped up moments. I personally think it could have been cut down to 70 episodes, but it's still a well-told, rounded series. Unless you aren't good with more gore, more vor, then steer clear. If you like my video just a little bit, it doesn't cost anything to hit that like, that subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This way you'll be notified of future episodes that I make. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome rest of your day. Bye.